Welcome to episode 17 of Ask the Grounding Experts, where our experts from ENS Grounding Solutions answer your engineering questions about the world of grounding and earthing. In this episode, ENS President and grounding guru David Stockin breaks down the question, what are the different electrical codes from around the world? Set the record straight, David.
That's a great question. There are a number of different electrical codes from around the world that, and they all seem to be very different. But in reality, turns out there's not 1,000 ways to run your electrical system. Turns out there's really just about 2. So either every country in this world either uses America's electrical system or some version therein, or they use England's electrical system or some version therein. So in America, we have the National Electrical Code. We release that about every 3 years, so it gets updated. It's been in use effectively somewhere in the early 1900s I believe around 1911 it started in its first publications. Prior to that, it was a series of notes that were gathered together and published in various trade journals until it finally got published, and then the NFPA grabbed it at some point, I believe around 1911, and we've been publishing the National Electrical Code, which is under the group, the NFPA publication number 70. So it would be NFPA 70. We know it better as the NEC, or National Electrical Code. But somewhere about 15 years before that, the British got their standard together, which is the BS 7671. And it's an excellent code that's been in use, and about 3/4 of the world is using it. So if you're in Germany, you're in France, Italy, all of them are harmonized codes under the EU's new protocols, and they're all basically based off of the original British electrical code, BS 7671. And there's been various versions. They update it about every 10 years. They come out with a major revision, and then throughout that 10 years, they'll do amendments and bring those different codes out, different changes in the code throughout the 10-year cycle. But basically every 10 years they release a new version of the code. They just recently released a new version of the 10-year cycle in 2018 for the British code. The other countries will follow suit at various levels. Every country in the what we call the International Electrical Code handles their systems just a little bit differently, but they're all harmonized based on the IEC. So if you're in Portugal, you'll have a code. It'll be very similar to what is in the British system. So if you're curious about an electrical system in another country, you can look on our website. We actually have a full list of all of the codes up there, along with some maps showing you which countries are under which code, and you can look and see what code they're using, whether it's basically a British code or the American code. Now, under the NEC code, there are really 2 primary ones that are in use. There's the National Electrical Code and the Canadian Electrical Code. The American code is very much written a little bit more like lawyer speak. It tells you what to do and what not to do, where the Canadian code is rewritten by engineers and is much more objective based. So it tends to be a little more clear and concise. And recently the Caribbean Confederacy, they're getting together, they're trying to align all their laws, and I believe they're even working on getting their monetary policies all lined up. But one of the first things they did is they selected an electrical code, and they picked the Canadian Electrical Code. The Canadian Electrical Code is an excellent document. It is in line with the National Electrical Code out of America. We sit on their board, they sit on our board. They release the document every 3 years, just like we do. It's just 1 year after ours. So we released ours in 2020, they released theirs in 2021. We'll release again in 2023, they'll release it in 2024. And so very much harmonious, just written very, very differently in the fact that it's objective based versus the way that the U.S. code is written. I actually like the Canadian code a great deal, and I tell electricians and electrical engineers here in the United States, if you ever have a question about what our code is trying to say, reference the Canadian code, go to theirs, read it, and then come back to our code, and oftentimes it'll help make sense about what our code is actually trying to say. So the entire world is either NEC based or IEC based. 3/4 of the planet is roughly based on the British Electrical Code. There are a few countries that do combinations of the two. Saudi Arabia being very famous for a mix of both the IEC and the NEC. We are seeing some mix across the board, particularly at the industrial level. So if an American company comes in and builds a plant in an IEC-based country, you often will see the plant is built to an American standard. We're seeing in a lot of NEC-based countries, the Chinese will come in and build a hospital or a new factory, and it'll be built to an IEC-based standard. We even see that here within the United States. We'll see European companies come in and build major factories right here in the United States, but they build them to IEC standards. Both the NEC and the IEC are far more similar than they are different. The laws of physics work the same. Does the IEC have conduit fill charts? You bet they do. Do they have the maximum amount of current that can flow down a given conductor based on its diameter? You bet they have. I mean, do they have requirements for overcurrent protection that, circuit breakers to automatically trip? Of course they have those. Do they have requirements for GFCIs? They call them RCDs, residual current devices. Well, of course they do. They do handle things a little differently. In America, we tend to bring in 2-phase wires. We call it single phase. They would call that split phase or 2-phase. They tend to only bring into home a single hot wire, a single neutral, and a single ground. In the grounding business, in the National Electrical Code, we use the word grounding. They use the word earthing. And if you search the National Electrical Code, you do a name search, you'll never see the word earthing anywhere in it. Same thing in the British Code. If you look up the word grounding, you'll never see it anywhere in there. They're completely swappable, though. In most cases, you can swap the word earthing and grounding. They mean the same thing. Both documents have requirements for below grade grounding, and they have requirements for above grade grounding. And again, they tend to be far more similar. One of the best things about the International Electrical Code, and I always encourage American electrical engineers and electricians to learn at least a little bit about the IEC, is they do a great job of what they call the general characteristics of an electrical system, I should say, the general characteristics of an electrical system, and they define them in advance before you ever walk into a structure. You can go right out onto the panel and you'll see it's a TNCS or it's a TNS system or it's a TT system. Means nothing to us, but once you learn that code, you know everything about that electrical system very quickly. Just by the simple code, you know where the neutral to ground bonds are at, how the grounding system is handled at the transformer that's feeding it. Are you on a grounded system or an ungrounded system? You don't have to go in and find that information out by opening panels and looking through documents. You can actually see it right on the panel. They identify it. It's called the general characteristics, and it's actually a very smart and intelligent thing, and I wish we would start doing it here in the United States. But that should give you a general understanding of where codes are at in the world. whether you're in India, you're using a British system. Hong Kong is using a British-based system. Russia is using a British-based system. Australia uses a British-based system. They call it the ASNZ 3000. They've made some changes to theirs. But all around the world, you will see groups using some version of the British Electrical Code. We now call it the International Electrical Code. Or they'll be using some version of America's electrical code that they've either rewritten or are just using it word for word. Same thing with the British code. You will see numerous countries. I believe there's 27 countries use the British code word for word. They don't change it. You just buy the British code. And that's what they use. Same thing like here in America. Many countries will just use our code word for word. So basically, every country in the world is using one of the two. And once you learn them both, it really is helpful when you're traveling or dealing with other folks from other engineers from Europe. It's really helpful to be able to speak with them. So I hope you find that helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, leave a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, hit like, hit the subscribe button for our channel. Leave a nice comment down there. If you're listening on a podcast, hit subscribe for that. Give us a call. Send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. Please give us suggestions for future videos and podcasts. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for watching. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a quick like down below and subscribe to stay up to date on future educational videos we will be publishing. And feel free to post questions or comments below as well. We might even feature your questions in future videos. If you'd like to learn more about the amazing world of electrical engineering and grounding, be sure to check out our certified online courses at the links in the description below to kickstart your career. See you next time.